you both for joining. Have Genesis Nobles and Kathy Nobles here. Today we're going to be talking about A Pastor's Wife, which is a book that Kathy wrote. I wanted to invite Genesis as well because you give a perspective of a pastor's kid, which I think is very valid. I will get Ariel on to talk a little bit later on. I love the fact that you allowed both your girls, Genesis and Ariel, to participate in this book. So let's just talk about being a pastor's wife. I did read the book. It was kind of talking about really a struggle. The struggle that you had just by even accepting that this was going to be a role that you was going to take. Mm-hmm. And then how that progressed until you actually getting into the role, which was years later, and then how that affected you.
Well, during the pandemic, when COVID hit, everyone was sanctioned to stay inside for a while. And while my husband was still online, I just decided to start creating videos. And I created a YouTube page and I started placing my thoughts and the struggle that I had been going through since we started. And I became a pastor's wife. It became therapeutic for me to be able to talk about it because I had no one to share it with, or at least I thought I had no one to share it with, or I thought I had no one who wanted to even hear it. Most people say, oh, just pray about it, it'll be okay. So I wanted an outlet, and so I decided to do it through videos. And then when I actually started placing it on paper, which was this past summer in 23, everything just kind of came to life and more chapters and more thoughts started coming. I went back to review those videos that I had already placed on YouTube, and I got those. I put script to it, and the Lord just started making things be recalled back to my memory. And so I just kind of went with that. And everything just started flowing. And then I believe it was 12 chapters later, so chapters started adding. So I just started from the very beginning and how it all started.
So as I was reading the book, it seems as if you allowed yourself to be very vulnerable, as well as Genesis, as well as Ariel. You allowed yourself to be very vulnerable in this book to say, I didn't want to do this. This is not something that I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. Why do you think it was so hard for you to even just want to be in that role? And I know you talked about it in the book, but I want to kind of delve into why it was such a process for you to want to even start that journey.
It was hard. It was a struggle for me to even start this process because I was comfortable where I was. For 40-something years, I was comfortable and I didn't want change. Once I get into a set place, I had been fine in the church where I was. I had been fine as a leader at my previous church, as a Christian education director. I had pretty much done everything in my former church, anywhere from ushering and on the praise team, a Sunday school teacher. I had been a secretary, altar call worker. So anything you can think of, I had did that. So I just felt like, okay, I'm good. There's nothing else that I need to do. I was comfortable and I didn't want a change in my life. So I was kind of like set in my ways. So that's where I was when my husband told me that he felt the calling on his life, that God had called him to be a pastor. We kind of started from there. And I just felt like it was going to be a change for me as well, and I didn't want change.
So in your book, you kind of gave some advice and things that you learned along the way. Explain how, looking back, you realized that maybe you kind of hindered a part of the process for the church from the beginning just by simply not being cooperative, being resistant to the change. Tell me about what you learned from that.
Well, I think it would have been a lot smoother had I just been submissive from the beginning, which kind of became a revelation towards the end of the book. But I was so used to being a leader in my own right, a leader on my job, a leader in my former church. So I was used to being allowed to take charge, being allowed to initiate things, some tasks, and I was trusted in those areas. So I was just used to doing just that. And when I became a pastor's wife, I was somewhat not allowed to walk in my previous role. I wasn't thinking that, okay, this is a new environment, a new era, a new task, a new ministry. And I was trying to walk in my old ministry. So I didn't know that was going to be a transition. I thought that because I was already a leader in my own right, then it was going to be a smooth transition. I was just going to go in and begin to do what I do best and lead. And so I was trying to go in and lead how I felt, take on the initiative to just do things without asking my pastor. So because I had been trusted before to lead, so I knew that I was trustworthy. And so I was trying to do a few things without asking. So I had to learn a lot of things through that. I had to learn all the fruit of the spirit all over again.
All of them. Every last one of them. All of them.
I had to learn all of them. Right. The patience, the long suffering, just the love, the kindness, everything. I had to learn it all over again.
Genesis, I do want to bring you in. Give me 1 second. I'm coming. One thing, as I was reading the book, and I kept thinking, if I was in your husband's shoes, you're trying to start like a new, I won't say business, but it's almost like you're starting from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
I can imagine how he probably really just didn't know where you fit. You know, he probably really didn't know how it was going to even come together, even where he fit in a sense, because this is totally new to him.
Right.
And so he was trying to figure out his spot. And then you want him to like, hey, well, where's my spot? I can see how stressful that could have been for both of you.
Right.
Really, because it was new for both of you. And although you had been in church all your life, really, y'all had been in church together since y'all was probably 18, 19, 20. And y'all basically grew up in church. But this was almost like starting from scratch for both of you. And then there's so much pressure to be successful.
Yes.
It's so much pressure to be successful. So I can imagine how he's probably wanting to give you some direction, but really don't know. Really, well, God give me direction.
Right. It was a struggle together. He was trying to find his way, and I was trying to find my way. And I was nugging and tugging on his shirt tail, like, well, what am I supposed to do? It's almost like a little kid pulling on their mama's coattail. And I'm saying, what am I supposed to do? And he's like, just go somewhere and sit down. It'll all unfold later. And then when he gave me little tasks, they were little tasks. Hindsight, looking back, it could have been a trial, my faith being tested, my patience being tested, just to see if I was going to accept the little things. And that's what I put from Zechariah, do not despise the little things. And I didn't do well with that test because I wanted something big. That was beneath me because I was the first lady. I was the pastor's wife. I wasn't supposed to be corrected like the other members. I thought I was supposed to get special treatment. And so all of those things, I'm trying to figure out what it is that I'm supposed to be doing. And he was trying to figure out for himself. He didn't have time to help me. We were all in this together. The struggle is real. And so it definitely was a huge transition. For one, because I didn't submit to the fruit of the spirit. I didn't pray right away. I didn't even look at what he may have been going through. I was looking at myself. It was all about me at that point. Very selfish, very selfish.
The interesting thing is, in the natural, we look at it as this is something between you and he, and y'all are trying to figure this out. But really, it's something between you and God. That's really what this was all about. It really had nothing to do with him.
Right.
God is like, you faithful over few, I'll make you rule over much. But you got to prove to me, you don't mind taking out the trash. You don't mind cleaning these toilets. You don't mind doing this flower arrangement.
Right.
It was really a submission between you and God, not you and your husband.
Right.
And what's that scripture? It talks about we wrestle not against flesh and blood, because it's so easy to wrestle with what we see in front of us. And not realizing that the person we see in front of us is not who's doing these tasks, not who's orchestrating this situation. That person is just simple a vessel too. God put him in a situation where he had to focus, and he's trying to figure it out. And now you're trying to figure it out, and you're looking for flesh and blood to help you figure it out. When God was just like beating you into submission, it ain't flesh and blood at all. It's me and you. Now what you gonna do? No, you're not a leader anymore. Now what you gonna do? No, you're not doing
Right.
that either.
Yeah.
Now it
Yeah.
forces you to come full circle back to God and like, okay, God, help me. But I love that you did come full circle. Genesis.
Yes.
Hey, Janice.
Hi, Mama.
So, preacher's kid, PK, they call y'all. Although the church, that was new, but you have been a PK for a long, long time.
Mm-hmm.
So your father saying, I think now I'm called to be a pastor over a church. I mean, in this life, you got a building that ain't different. I mean, and so you and Ari kind of talked about the pressure, specifically talked about not getting invited. It's true. We're not invited pastor's kids. We're not invite y'all because we don't know. Y'all living holy and righteous. We don't know. Can't invite you. But it ain't personal. So tell me from your perspective, and I know you kind of talked about feeling sheltered. Not only do your parents, not your parents, but just in general, the pastor and pastor's wife expect their kids to have a certain image. The world expects the pastor's kids to have a certain image.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all didn't ask for any of this. So what advice would you give to pastors' kids and also to the pastors and the pastors' wives who's raising pastors' kids? The floor is yours.
That's heavy. Like you were saying, the only difference for me personally, Erin could have had her own experience, but the only difference for me was they now had a building. My parents have been serving in the church since way before I was born. So I'm used to staying late at the church. I'm used to seeing mama go to practice in the choir. I'm used to daddy working in the sound booth and the soundboard. So I have always gotten used to that lifestyle, being around other pastors, having to travel to other places to watch my bishop at the time preach. And so I was so used to being around that and having those experiences and almost having that judgment since the beginning. I think for me personally, it was very hard because even the westernized churches, the culture was much different than it is now. It was a lot more strict, knee highs, the silks under the dresses, the all white. You either had white stockings or black. There was no skin tone,
You better not come up in here with your legs on.
We've been dealing with that since the beginning. The culture definitely changed as we got older. But I think for me, as I kind of talked about and mom added to the book, because of that, being transitioned through those cultures, being able to see the two different ones, I do understand looking back that mom only taught me the way she was raised as well. As you all was raised, what grandma taught you all, and that was just kind of passed down. So she only did the best. It's all right, mom. But that's all right. That's all right. We stepping out now. But for me, it did contribute to my personality because the way I was raised was like, we're in the church. We can't do this. We can't go out late. Even growing up, the whole dating thing, you need to focus on everything. In the school, the skating ring was popular and everybody likes to go out to eat and all these different things, but we have to maintain this image. We have to be a certain way. We have to dress a certain way. And that pressure, not only from my parents, the church culture as well. A lot of people inside of the church was like, well, you a PK. And even though they may have just been making jokes, that pressure was still put on us. It was like, oh man, we can't do none of this stuff. So I did lose a lot of friends from that. And sometimes I had moments where I would judge other PKs that may have been able to do a lot more stuff. But I'm like, well, I was told we couldn't do this. And so I did become very shy. I didn't really feel like I could speak my mind a lot of times because I didn't really understand. As I got older and God did place Dad to lead his own church, it did become a lot heavier and a lot different because with me, I was just on the dance team. Everybody had their ministry at the church where they were serving. I was just on the dance team. That's what I did. You know, they brought us up every Easter to sing, but that's what I did. And that was it. And then I was able to go home. I was able to do all these different things. But building from the ground up, you all kind of have multiple places that need help. This still needs done.
Right, everything.
Right, everything. You don't have all the groups. This group is going to have this. You are that group. You're multiple groups. So on top of seeing that pressure on mom and dad, you became the custodian and doing all this stuff. So I already don't want to go out and be, you know, open because I built myself to be like, well, I have to be in this box. But now you have to be even more friendly. You got to invite, you know, your name is sticking with your parents' name, and you got to be open and bubbly and doing all these different things. And you have to serve for multiple ministries. You got to learn how to work the camera and the mic and all these different things. And so it did become a lot because at the time, I was transitioning to college as well. My freshman year, that was kind of the first time I was outside of my parents' house and I was able to kind of build my own personality. I wasn't any longer Miss Nobles or Lady Nobles or Patsy Nobles' daughter, because that's how I was highlighted throughout my life. I was like, I know you're, even with my grandparents going back to their town, you're so-and-so's granddaughter or you're so-and-so's daughter. And that's who I was. That's how I was defined.
In all honesty, when we have kids, we don't have a name no more either. We become so-and-so's mom. Like, let's just be clear. We moved on to you.
Yes.
I don't have a name no more. But anyway, go ahead.
Listen. I'm just telling my story. But when I was able to step back, I was able to kind of grow as my own self. I was able to understand the pressure of why God transitioned our family, because it wasn't just that transitioning. Like Mama said, it was, you know, all of us. We were all transitioning. God was taking us all to this new level. I think moving forward, and this is kind of combined advice for the parents and the PK, just like the scripture says, all have sinned, all have fallen short to the glory of God. No person, whether title, whether this, whether that, you're human. God won't take you anywhere where he won't prepare you for. I truly believe that every season has a purpose, because as mentioned in the book, I don't know where I would be. And I'm actually glad in some ways I was raised the way I did, because I would probably be dead or somewhere, I don't know, if I wasn't that way, because of the culture that was around me going to school. So I would definitely say, do not put that pressure of the title on yourself, because at the same time, God will prepare you. You don't have to prepare yourself. And being able to come together and prepare each other and support each other, even though we're all just trying to figure it out. There's nothing wrong with having those conversations and saying, hey, you know, this is kind of what's going on, you know, that communication, because having that really would have helped, I think, a lot of times, just understanding, because while we were transitioning, I was still building my own walk with God. And so with that, it started to turn into building what looks right with him rather than a real relationship.
I love the stuff that you talked about being human. And I think that not only goes to pastor's kids, but the pastor and the pastor's wife, to allow yourself grace to not be perfect. Just to allow yourself your own mercy. Kathy, you talk in the book about being able to wear pants to school, but not being able to wear the pants to church. There's 2 times I've heard our parents argue. 2 times. One of those times was about us having to wear dresses all the time. I heard him say, I want my girls to fit in. I don't want them to be wearing dresses all the time and then they stand out of the crowd. Not necessarily I want them to fit in and just be like everybody else, but he was like, I want to be a part of the mainstream. I don't want them to stand out. And I specifically heard him say this.
Maybe I was watching television.
Probably was, because I caught that argument. I caught it right in front of Christmas tree, right in front of Christmas tree. But Mama was in a church culture, as Genesis mentioned, of dresses all the time. No earrings, no makeup, none of that. None of it. But their agreement was we could wear pants everywhere else, but we had to wear dresses when we went to church. That's what they agreed on, and I was happy about it. Honey, he was advocating. He was advocating because it was cold. It was cold out there. I said right in front of the Christmas tree, it was cold outside.
We had to wear the skirts to school at one point.
Yes.
You know, yeah.
Yes.
And so that's also... There was a time at our church growing up where the pastor did allow pants and shorts, and then somebody would take it too far and wear the shorts too short. I remember that. Or either they would wear jeans that were too tight. He went back to, all right, you don't know how to do it, then you're going back to wearing dresses. I remember a turnover time where he tried it, you know, because the world was changing and he was deciding to change with the world, but he didn't like it because somebody abused their privileges, and we had to go right back to wearing the dresses and the skirts. So, and I do remember that. I remember not being able to wear earrings, and our dad, he advocated for that, and he was the one that took us to the place to get our ears pierced. The church folks was like, no earrings, no makeup, no pants, no jewelry. It was pretty strict at some point, you know, and no fingernail polish.
No fingernail polish.
For a long time, I used to, and I think I got you started on that too. I used to have the cutout pieces of construction paper, and I would glue them to my ears for earrings. I had all different colors. I had all different shapes. I had best looking earrings there was. I had little red diamonds. I had blue triangles. And maybe he saw that because he took us to get our ears.
Man.
Well,
that's that bad.
That was the second argument I heard between them two. Was us getting our ears pierced. And I remember her saying, well, if you want them done, you take them yourself. And he said, okay. And I was in the car.
My ear construction paper fell on the floor and he found it or something.
He was probably tired of picking it up.
Yeah.